Let me tell you a story of a woman. A woman who grew up in a little village in another country where the only expectation for that woman was to learn to cook well, learn to clean well, find a good husband, have lots of children, and raise a family. Going to school was definitely not an option. It was not something that she could do. Going to school was something that only women from well-to-do families could do. This woman, unfortunately, did not come from a well-to-do family. This woman had to cook for her 9 siblings, had to help her mother clean the house, raise the children, and every now and then go work in the field with her father and her siblings. If she was lucky and she finished her chores early and somehow got out of having to go to the field, she would take a book that she would find laying around and try and teach herself how to learn, how to read and how to write. This woman knew that there was more to life than what was expected of her. She knew there was a lot to learn in life and a lot to do, but she didn't know how. This woman, in her heart, longed for knowledge. She wanted to go to school and learn. She would daydream about someday being somebody in life. She would daydream of all the things that she knew were out there for her to learn, but wasn't able to. Well, she swore that if she ever had kids, girls especially, she would let them go to school. She wouldn't make them work the way she had to. So this woman eventually, she got married and had a daughter. Her dream now was to be able to provide enough so that her daughter could actually learn and go to school and live her dream. She wanted her daughter to learn the things that she knew were out there left to be learned. Eventually, she came to the US with her daughter and husband. She was very enthusiastic about it because she knew that this was the country of opportunity that she didn't have where she was. She saw her dream becoming one step closer by coming to the United States. Her daughter ended up going to school, and this woman didn't think the school was good enough. But how can she afford private school? Over her husband's objection, she started working in a factory solely to pay for her daughter's school. Every month, her paycheck would go to pay for her daughter's private education. So this woman said, I'm starting to live my dream through my daughter. And her daughter actually didn't let her down. Her daughter actually went to school and loved it so much that she ended up staying in school for 20 years. Probably would have stayed a little bit longer if she could, but at some point it was time to grow up. Then her daughter became a lawyer. And all of this was because this woman once had a dream. Now, if you haven't guessed it by now, that daughter is me. Thanks to my mother's dream, I was allowed to learn and become everything I could and that my mother couldn't. In fact, even after becoming a single mother at the age of 19, my desire to learn and keep that dream alive was so powerful and instilled in me that I kept going to school and eventually became a lawyer. I was a successful young entrepreneur who had my own business. And let me tell you, it was during the 2008-2009 crisis, and my business was booming. That was actually good business for me. Foreclosure defense was on the rise. At the end of the day, I got to go home to a beautiful home with my loving husband, my beautiful car, and my 3 beautiful daughters. Life was great, right? I mean, what else can you ask for? That is the dream. I accomplished the dream my mother had. And I so much appreciated her sacrifice, and her support that my dream was to one day be able to pay off my parents' mortgage and that my parents would retire early and never have to work a day in their life for the sacrifice they did for me. Well, life was so great to me that I actually accomplished that dream. I was able to pay off my parents' mortgage, and they've never had to work a day in their life since. Man, I was living the dream, let me tell you. But you know what? You really never know how good you have it until you don't. Just as I was at the top of my game, my youngest daughter, who was about to turn 1 at the time, and I was already looking forward to my next one because I wanted a big family. I'm an only child. You know, I needed to have lots of kids. I'm Mexican after all. But, pop, a crippling, debilitating pain stopped me on my tracks. I was rushed into the emergency room. The pain was so horrible that I felt like all my insides had literally burst inside of me. An emergency surgery was done, and they extracted a 5-pound tumor that burst through my left ovary. That was the pop. Well, they'll remove it, and I should be back to work in no time, so I thought, big deal. Meantime, I'll enjoy the drugs, right? But the doctor came to my hospital bed and said, hey, you want to see it? I said, what, the tumor? She said, yeah. I said, yeah, let me see that sucker. She shows it to me. It was the most ugliest thing I've ever seen, let me tell you. But then she said, well, you know, we also have the biopsy results. I'm like, okay, cool. She's like, you have cancer. Not just any cancer. You have ovarian cancer. Ladies, that is known as the silent killer for a reason. You don't know you have it until it's too late. As the doctor's telling me this, my mother is walking into the room with my husband and my oldest daughter, and all I heard was the flat line ringing in my ears, followed by the screaming, crying pain coming out of my mother's mouth as she fainted. Well, I had to kind of snap out of it now and figure out what's next. So the doctor tells me I have to go see an oncologist and get staged. But in order to get staged, they have to do yet another surgery. I mean, I had a criminal trial with an America's Most Wanted defendant. I didn't have time for this shit. I needed to get better quickly because, you know, I was at the top of my game. Another surgery, okay, well, let's do it. No problem. Doctor says, but you know, in order for us to know what stage you are, we're gonna have to remove your other ovary to test it for cancer cells. And I said, okay, no problem, but you'll be able to put it back, right? No, that's not how it works, he said. We cannot put it back. Once we take it out, it's out. Let me tell you the things I told that doctor. I said, how can you tell me that you can take a heart out of a person and put it back, but you can't take an ovary out and put it back? That just doesn't make sense. He said, well, maybe, you know, after this, you can go to school and kind of figure that out and make that invention. Funny doctor. So, typical lawyer, I said, well, how about we make a deal? I have 3 girls. I don't have a boy. I want a boy. So how about you do the staging? Mine is removing the ovary. I'll go get pregnant right away. And then when it's time for me to give birth, you just do a C-section. Take out the ovary and the baby at the same time and we'll all be happy. This is not a negotiation, Ms. Diaz, is what he said. This is not how it works. We can leave it, but if there's any sign of cancer, remember, it can spread fairly quickly. The silent killer, remember? And he said, would you rather be alive for 3 or dead for 4? When the doctor told me that, the pain I felt, both physically mentally, spiritually, I cannot describe to you. My dream of having a boy, out the window. But you know what? I didn't have time for all that. Because now I needed to figure out my now what. Now what, I asked myself. Well, little did I know that that was actually the beginning of me fulfilling my dream. Sometimes bad things happen to us and we don't know why, but at the end you end up understanding it.